Thank you for staying with us. We continue with our wall-to-wall coverage of the fallen news of the president of Kenya, that is the former president, that is Daniel Toroitich arap Moi. And of course, we are still with our guest here in studio, Ahoro Ndoho, who is the former Director General in charge of debt at the National Treasury. And we're revisiting the legacy of President Moi. Many thanks for staying with us. And Ahoro, before we went for the break, we were looking at the key issues around debt. And at the time, President Moi was handing over to President Kibaki. Our GDP had grown 3 times. Our population had hit about 32 million plus. At the same time, the late President Moi is also revered for his prowess when it came to managing international dynamics, when it came to funding for Kenya and especially external resources. Talk to us about how he survived economic sanctions, because at that time, I remember the Bretton Woods institution was very clear that for African countries to get funding, you had to toe the line, and you had to, of course, be able to follow issues around the structural adjustment programs. But for President Moi, he was able to outfox them and outmaneuver them. And eventually, we were able to still run an economy.
Well, yes, I suppose that is true. You could not, of course, there was pain also with that when the West turned its back on Kenya. And I know it's a poor parallel, but when the same happened in South Africa actually grew because it had developed a policy to become self-sufficient. And to the extent that that hurt Kenya, yes, our economy slowed down, but also forced us to be more self-reliant. There was pain for dislocation in terms of the public service. I think there's a huge layoff. But all those were the consequences of the fact that we did not have as big a base of an economy. But somehow between Kenya's resilience, the fact that we've been growing our human resource over that time, meant that by insisting on investing in our people, it gave us the foundation for the Kenya we have now, we have today. The fact that he was sanctioned from taking loans also means that even for a country, we could not depend on past relationships. So in terms of other friends, we didn't have China, we didn't have other options. And so to some extent, the resilience of the Kenyan economy really started then. And so by the time he handed over power, I think we were still, I think we were on about 1.2 trillion shillings in debt, which was very small for the size of the economy. And he didn't have as many grandiose ideas in terms of growing infrastructure, growing the foundation or the base, economic base of this country. And so to some extent, it was a different kettle of fish then. The fact that he managed to steer us through safely, I think is maybe his greatest legacy. You talk to any other country in Africa, they will tell you that the things we take for granted around peace, around peaceful transfer of power, these are not things to be taken for granted. And they go a long way in making Kenya what it is today.
Interesting. And what are some of the lessons the business leaders can pick from the late president, especially when it comes to running a country? He was very in touch with the politics of the day. He was also very in touch with the investment climate. What are the key takeaways for the leaders out there?
Well, I think, and it's been mentioned severally by some of our commentators, the whole notion of focusing on the human resource is critical. You can have oil and still goes to waste or destroys you. You can have other natural resources, but the fact that he focused and concentrated on the human resource development of Kenya, we can almost say that Kenya is today, we've reaped the education dividend out of having a peaceful country for 56 years now. And he pretty almost half of that time was him in power. And that, in a sense, sets in place the dynamic for what Kenya has become now in terms of its human resource. Being actually a powerhouse, we punch way above our weight in terms of our skill set and ability to address problems because of a very wide and diversified human resource base.
All
and
right.
that's an important lesson for people, for leaders to take away.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your valuable historical insights. We've been speaking there to Ahoro Ndoho, who is the former debt director at the National Treasury, just recollecting some of the key milestones that Kenya achieved under President Moi's rule. Well, Noah Kipkemboi still has more coming up.